The Republicans can actually supersede any executive order the president wants on immigration by actually passing a bill. So it's interesting that the Republicans, I talk about that balance of power. Yeah, it's changed for the president, but it's changed for the Republicans too. They've done pretty well opposing his agenda the last 6 years. But the White House points out, and I think it is true, that over the next 2 years, the Republicans will have the House and the Senate. So if they want to scream and yell about the executive orders that are coming, they can wipe them out and supersede them with a law that actually focuses on border security.
No, but
so I think it's also put up or shut up time for Republicans.
Yeah, well, of course, the president could always veto any such bill if he doesn't like what's in it. It's not that easy. Joining us now is Susan Ferrechio, Chief Congressional Correspondent for the Washington Examiner. And Susan, before we get to that, let's start with the breaking news of the day, really one of the breaking bits of news, and that is the Supreme Court agreeing to hear the subsidies portion of Obamacare. And, you know, McConnell said we're not going to overhaul Obamacare or get rid of it. Boehner said we will. And now, it could be the Supreme Court that decides it, because if they deem this portion to be unconstitutional, that guts a big part of the bill.
Well, that's true. I think it was largely expected that this would ultimately go to the Supreme Court. It was being tossed around on the lower court level for a while with mixed results, some supporting it, some opposing it. And now it's landed at the Supreme Court, and they're going to make a big decision. It's true, it would gut the law in some ways if they rule in favor of the business. But I do think that ultimately this fight will end up in Congress, because as you said at the beginning of the broadcast, we have Republicans now running the House and the Senate. And I do believe that they will be able to pass some measures that pick apart the bill, not repeal it wholesale, but pick apart the bill in a way that gets Democratic support. And that would make it difficult for the president, because he'd have to veto stuff that's bipartisan. I'm not saying he won't do so, but for instance, a medical device tax, which is unpopular with Democrats, but funds a large part of the health care law. Also, the mandate that a work week is 30 hours, which has hurt jobs and hurt job creation. There's another one that's unpopular. I think the individual mandate. All these things are unpopular, could garner enough Democratic support, but again, they would gut the law too. So I think you have it coming, a two-pronged approach here potentially that could undo the law. It'll be very interesting this year to see what the Supreme Court does with it, but also to see what Congress is able to pull off and what kind of pressure it puts on the president.
Yeah, and I'm just of the opinion that he'll veto anything without regard to political implications.
You may be right about that.
Unless, of course, they could get enough support to override the veto, which would be very interesting. All right, so let's talk about this immigration thing here. The media and the president, they talk as if this is what the public wants, and this is, 75%, Kellyanne Conway's poll, the polling company did a poll of voters when they left the polling booth, and they asked them, what about the president's threat of an executive order on immigration? 75% said, no, don't do it. Yet, the media is like, well, how are you going to compromise with the president? I mean, he has a right to do this. He should do this. He told you he would do this. It's insane. Well,
I think there are many layers of murkiness to the immigration debate. And the most murky layer is the areas where the president and Republicans do agree at some level. The Republican leadership that says they're willing to actually increase immigration, but not do it the way the president wants. And therein lies the difference that's going to muck things up and prevent them from doing anything. I don't think Republicans want to do nothing, but the fact that the president wants to take executive action is going to make it absolutely impossible for anything to get done. And I think that poll you just cited is a very important poll, and it's one that I believe Republicans heard loud and clear. I heard the Speaker of the House make reference to it yesterday when he talked about the voters have spoken. They really don't want the president to take unilateral action. So I believe you'll see Republicans keep a very kind of firm stance on this, Steve, where they don't do anything if they're not going to act as though the president's threat is going to make them act.
Right.
I think what they're going to do is let the president make a move and watch the crowd go wild, but not with excitement, but with anger.
Yeah.
I think Republicans want this to play right into their hands. That's my theory right now, but it will make it really difficult to pass, say, a really strong border security bill, a bill that couples really strong border security with increased visas, which is already controversial, of course, with Republicans. A lot of them don't like it, some of them do. again, what all this does really is kind of conceal what I believe is still a big divide within the Republican Party over how they want to handle immigration. It's being covered up right now by this deportation issue that the president is going to take up. But underlying all that, Democrats have their own problems with immigration too. All of this making it real treacherous territory in 2015.
Very quickly, Senator Vitter was on yesterday, and I asked him about the nuclear option, if they're going to reverse it. And he said, yeah, because if we kept it, it only applies to presidential appointments. So he said it would actually benefit the president for the next 2 years as a Democratic president who would only need 51 votes in the Senate, even though, you know, Republicans would have a majority, theoretically speaking. So they're going to get rid of the nuclear option, which the way he said it made a lot of sense, but it surprised me still at the same time.
Well, no final decision's been made on that. The minority leader's been pretty ambiguous about it himself, about where they're going to go. Mitch McConnell, who's about to be the majority leader. So that's a huge question. But don't forget, this doesn't apply to Supreme Court justices.
Right, only to presidential, the kind of
lower
political
judges. He
appointments.
stacked it, though. I mean, Harry Reid, the majority leader until December, is planning on clearing 50 judges.
Oh, I know. That's the scary part.
This stuff matters, Steve.
Susan,
you know?
Great to talk to you. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Susan Ferrechio, ladies and gentlemen, right here on the show, and we'll be back with columnist and editor of the Wall Street Journal's online editorial page, James Taranto, after the break. But first, when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus, well, that was a landmark. Let's take a look back at that day in history with this hour's American Moment.
Her name is synonymous with the struggle for equal rights throughout America. But when Rosa Parks stepped on that Montgomery, Alabama bus on December 1st, 1955, she didn't set out to make history. She just wanted to get home. Montgomery's segregated buses had divided seating. White passengers in front, colored passengers in the back. Contrary to popular belief, Rosa was sitting in the back of the bus. But when the bus driver needed more seats for his white passengers, he ordered her and 3 others to vacate their seats. The others complied and moved, but Rosa quietly refused and was quickly arrested. Working alongside Dr. Martin Luther King, Rosa's arrest sparked a highly effective citywide protest with African Americans boycotting city buses.
December 5th was the day the people stayed off in large numbers and did not ride the bus. In fact, most of the buses, I think all of them were just about empty.
Rosa's protest and resulting boycott didn't end segregation, but it sparked a movement that ended the racial system, paving the way for a more equal society. You're watching An American Moment on Newsmax TV.
President Obama authorizes the military to send up to 1,500 more troops to fight ISIS in Iraq. I'm Jessica Page, and the story tops your Newsmax Now update. Meanwhile, the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, will head to the Supreme Court. Conservative challengers of the act want to limit the federal subsidies. A former Navy SEAL turned motivational speaker faces criticism for going public. Robert O'Neill, who claims to have killed Osama bin Laden, tells an audience in Tennessee he's proud of his mission. No word yet what caused the Apache helicopter crash near the Boise Airport in Idaho. 2 service members are dead. The National Guard is not releasing any names. In New Zealand, the AC/DC drummer Phil Rudd still faces drug possession and threatening to kill charges, but murder for hire charges have now been dropped. That's your Newsmax Now update. More coming your way in 30 minutes. As always, stay connected at newsmax.com.